The 80s, from what I remember, in terms of pop music and youth culture and places where you would dance, it was very, like clubs, it was very particular. And clubs were a lot to do with fashion, and the emphasis was more on how you looked. Whereas when so it was quite a closed world. It wasn't open to everyone. So when Acid House came along, it kind of completely tipped it all on its head, and the music became the most important thing, and the way you looked became much less important. And as far as I'm concerned, I was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time, and that right place was this club. Well, it wasn't a club; it was like a night called Shum, and this was in '88, and it was before raves. Shum was really underground. It's on one night a week. I remember the first time I went there. I walked in and I could, the energy was, well, it was before you walked in, you could feel it just walking down the street. When I actually went into the club and I saw all these people, I could understand there was something going on here and people were experiencing something special, but I didn't quite get the music. So music was quite alien, abstract music. But what happened is that I took ecstasy. And then it all made complete sense.
It was an interesting period. I mean, the most interesting thing about it was the way that everything spread like wildfire through word of mouth, and then you had this kind of media, amazing amounts of kind of moral panic about. I remember talking to friends and going, if you take ecstasy, your spinal cord turns to jelly. Literally there was just these urban myths that were surrounding not just the use of drugs, but also the kind of like the impact of these repetitive beats and going, it was a really, really odd time, but so exciting.
It was extraordinary. It was a feeling of liberation that we'd never really felt before. The music was, the music was new. This drug, ecstasy, was new. It was illegal. The music was underground. Because it was so potent, it was so exciting, you couldn't contain it, and it just spread. The demand was too much for the clubs. So the sort of demand to find places to have an all-night party, to have a rave, was huge. So hence the M25 orbital parties and the warehouse raves.
They could escape from their normal lives, their normal jobs, and come together as a community and party together, listening to music they loved.
What was startling about the kind of birth of kind of dance music in the UK was just how weird it sounded. And it's just so amazing that you could think of that now when, we know everything, every genre, we can identify tech house from deep house, from trance, from every other genre, but at the time it was all just so strange and weird.
And music of them days wasn't that accessible as it is now. You couldn't buy a record if you heard it on a set, where you can now. You can just go on Spotify and even find it. You can Shazam it and find it. But then it was hard. So hearing these tunes, it was rare. So these moments were rare, and that's why people loved it. It was unique. It was special.
Then there was the independent record shops, which was dance record shops, and they were like a massive magnet of information. That's where you'd get your information from, is from a record shop. And you go to a record shop especially on a Saturday afternoon, and there'll be people spilling out on the street, people listening to records, but also that's where you buy tickets as well for raves, and where you get flyers, and so record shops were really important, really important.
It's actually crazy when you listen to like music from the 80s and 90s. I was listening to this album by a guy called Susumu Yokota recently, some Japanese producer from the 90s, and I was listening to it, and it sounds like the music that's getting released now, that's becoming popular, and everyone's like, oh, this new music's so crazy and cool, and it is really good, like this sort of burial style, broken, syncopated beats. But it all happened back in the 80s and 90s in America, in the UK, in Japan. So it's interesting seeing the sort of waves of trends and waves of popularity like carry on, like recycling the old stuff that was popular in the past as well.
So basically I run an events collective called Delphic, which is in Leeds. We're currently based at one club called Wire. We basically run underground electronic music nights.
We thought there was somewhat of a gap for sort of darker techno music. There was a event company that sort of inspired us, I guess, when we first got here, called Alter, but then now moved to London. And one of the first events we went to at Wire was Marcel Fengler that they put on the Friday night. And that was just the first experience we'd had with Wire, and it was amazing. So that sort of inspired us to start our own up.
I mean, you always try and say you bring something slightly different to the table. So we've tried to sort of bring in people that haven't played in the city before. And then just to introduce sort of different DJs to people that wouldn't normally see them before. We've had our friends play, so it helps sort of get their names out. We've got friends who live in Manchester who are like a duo. They played for us, and we had like 300 people there. It was sort of the best one we've had. So it's good to sort of get their name out.
Just motivated on everyone having a good time, really. Nothing too serious, and yeah, like I said, it's a place you can go, forget about what you want to be doing, what you're thinking about, stress, anything like that. It's just a nice place to meet like-minded people.
Everyone's welcome, but obviously we're in a massive uni-based city, so students are our main target audience. We generally leaflet around like halls, go to talk to students, because especially first years as well, because obviously they're going to be here for like the next 3 years, so you want them to come back and keep on supporting our events.
Many times I've seen, especially girls, being touched inappropriately, which is not okay. Homophobic behaviour, racist behaviour, seen it all. It does happen, but as a culture, everyone tries to stick together and sort of get rid of it, which is a good thing. You don't see it all too much, but yeah, it definitely does happen.
I've seen negative experiences, and I've heard of negative experiences. Right from the free party scene to festivals, the free party scene has degraded over the past 10 years through gangs and gang violence, territorial, over drugs, over NOS, and festivals as well, the same kind of culture.
I think as much as I'm an advocate of regulated drug use, I think the drug part of it can bring a negative side into it, because at the moment there's still a black market around it and a dark economy around it. People have a tendency to abuse the openness that happens at festivals and events for their own personal gain, and that's where the bad side of it can come. I think the whole part of clubbing and the whole part of dance music is about openness, equality, no matter whether you're black, white, Indian, Chinese, whether you're gay, straight, trans, like it doesn't matter. Like everyone dances together and everyone loves each other the same. But people people abuse that sometimes.
So there is negative, but it depends on the scale and the size of these events that you go to. I believe that smaller events have a much more tight-knit community where there's much more respect and love for everyone else. Whereas the big events suffer because gangs and negative inflicted people have more scope to attend these events.
There are so many negative stories about the fact that clubs are closing down, that live music venues are closing down left, right and centre, and that there's kind of the gentrification of city centres, that's very difficult to find warehouses that you can, you know, really have a proper warehouse event rather than something that's a sanitised version of it. I do accept that it's hard to have those moments of authentic pleasure sometimes because everything seems so locked down in terms of the venues. But there's no question that the music is getting more and more exciting, and I can't see it stopping any day soon.
The increase in popularity of the underground scene has been growing, and society between the younger ages, with your early 20s and your 30s, people like partying, people like clubbing because it gives them their sense of freedom, it gives them their break from their weekly doings and can enjoy themselves with their friends.
Whereas now, that sort of idea of underground clubbing and underground dance music has definitely been popularised and far beyond what we enjoy as well. Like the Club Factory in Manchester is such a popular club, but the way it's set up, it's like a, you know, an old industrial building, 3 floors of like quite dark, cool settings, but they just play like pop music and grime music, and I don't know, it feels like the whole idea of underground and whatever coolness has sort of been a little bit lost, especially in the UK.
It's definitely become more popular, I think, especially with festivals like Houghton arising. And I think that last year it sold out within minutes, and that's all sort of electronic dance music and stuff. So you can really see a lot more people taking it on. And when we went, it was quite like a vast crowd. There was like a lot of older people there, people my age, people younger. So yeah, it's definitely becoming more accepted by this generation, I guess.
I think social media's helped that quite a lot. Obviously, sort of 20 years ago, when social media wasn't about, it was purely underground scene. You'd only know about it if you went to the events or word of mouth or through sort of seeing posters here and there. But it is open to everyone now, sort of on social media. Anyone posts about it, shares things here and there. If you like a page, it comes up on your news feed. Even if you don't like the page, sometimes it's sponsored and it comes up on your news feed. So it is sort of out there to a lot more people than it used to be, I think.
Something that I'm really proud of about the scene is that there's a lot of people in it who really want to retain the non-commercialism of it, and there's most of the labels, the music, the clubs that I'm involved with and that other people around me are involved with really want to retain that. So it's stuff like refusing corporate sponsors and you know, not just investing £50,000 into, I'm going to say Calvin Harris, even though it's more like £800,000, but it's not just about that, about doing an event where people dance to make money. It's more about retaining the culture of equality and openness and fairness. But it definitely does concern me sometimes that the scene is now very open to everyone. As much as we love techno, I love techno, and I want everyone else to love techno as well. But also, when things become popularised and commercialised, I don't think there's ever been a time in history where that's not been bad for it in the long run. So that does concern me.
I think this would have to be from the outside looking in. I think that there's been some mainstreaming of EDM. It's not necessarily as alternative in some ways, and that will rise to the fore, and then a new subculture will emerge, and that will be the alternative. But I think that's really true of all musics, actually, independent and mainstream music. There will always be an alternative, and when things get too mainstream, people want to look for something else, which is why working with students, and particularly around youth cultures, is so exciting because it keeps your finger on the pulse.
It seems like people are actually far more courageous about picking up, even if they've just got a bog standard MP3 decks or something, that people are a lot less fearful of doing that sort of stuff. And they even talk about having, DJing at their friends' parties and there's 50 people, and they talk about it like you'd talk about somebody DJing at a club with 800 people in it or something. And I really love that because it feels like there's a democratization. We always talked about this right at the birth of the dance music scene in the UK, that it meant that, girls, boys, ugly kids, beautiful kids, people with different sort of talents could always make a really big impression on. You didn't have to have an image, you didn't have to have a kind of the mechanics that are behind, say, a band, management and styling and PR and marketing and all those things, that the idea, the purity of just like almost an anonymous 12-inch single that goes into the hands of 20 people who play it and think it's brilliant, and then that blows up. There's something really exciting about it.
In the moment, the feeling feels euphoric. It's like insomnia when you escape every means of society and your life, forget about it all, blow it all away, and just believe in yourself and party.
There's actually nothing like it. Like, how I picture it is when you're walking through the crowd, you get to drinks in the bar and you're walking through the crowd and you're looking at everyone, just random people, and you make eye contact with them and they just like give you a smile and they're enjoying it and you're enjoying it. Then you go to the front, give your drink to your friends, and you look at each other and you're just like, yeah, this is great.
On one side, the feeling of having organised an entire event, having sometimes thousands of pounds on the line as to whether it's going to do well or not, and looking out to the crowd, where sometimes DJing, sometimes next to the DJ, and knowing that you've smashed it, and seeing everyone out there having an absolutely sick time. You can see their faces are hands in the air. Oh, like that is one of the best feelings in the world.
It feels wonderful. Just happy, you're with all your mates, everyone's smiling, everyone's having a good time. You just don't really have a care of anything else in the world. All your thought processes on that night.
In the moment, I sort of feel a little bit disconnected from the outside world. Just surrounded by people with the same passion as you, and also doing something you love, and it takes you a bit away, forget about the stress of life.
I think that music will change the world fundamentally for the better. We couldn't be living in times that are more important for people to have an outlet. The world is completely crazy, and music has always been a counterculture to that, and it offers people a release from stress. It's really good for you, makes your brain work in different ways to any other cultural experience, and maybe if we had a bit more music in the world, we wouldn't be in Trump America and Brexit Britain.
It's had a massive part of my life for when I've been growing up. I may have got into a few things I shouldn't have when I was younger, but it introduced me into electronic music at a much younger age than some other people, and especially the rave culture and the community. And it developed me as a person and made me realise how important electronic music is to me, and it's formed now my life and my future.
It connects with something very primal within everyone, and that's to sort of dance, without self-consciousness. And when we go out, we want to have a good time. And to have a good time is to relax and let yourself go, get into your body and out of your head, and to be intimate, to be close, to be physical, to move your body. And electronic music, in many ways, is the music that does that better than any other music, because it's so hypnotic. It's more hypnotic than any music, because it's computer generated, so that it never stops. It'll never stop.